everybody in England receives an emergency alert to say that there are nuclear missiles coming, and the impact is in 59 minutes. And then we see them, um, so the story of everybody is told through these three women, which is what would you do if you only had 59 minutes left? What matters most to you when nothing else is going to matter soon? And it's being with their people. And so it's getting to the people that they love. Um, so we've got Carrie, who's in London. She's in London Waterloo, which is a main central transport hub. And her partner Emma and their child Clementine, who's a toddler, is she's about 25 minutes walk away. She was only going to get the tube because it was that bit quicker. So she's determined to get to them before impact. And then we've got Frankie, who is in Dartmoor, which is a really isolated, beautiful, rugged, ancient part of the southwest. It's very sparsely populated. There were wild ponies. It's beautiful. It's dark. And they're from Manchester, so they're out of towners and they're city urban types, and they're here for a romantic weekend. So they don't know anybody and they don't know the area and they don't know the land and they've got no food in the fridge. And she's newly pregnant. So they have to sort of try to, yeah, get provisions, they get separated. Um, she wants to get back with him in time. And then we have Mrs. Dabb, whose daughter is a teenager and she's always good as gold. And this is the one day when the school bus pulls up outside the cottage and her daughter doesn't get off and she doesn't know where she is. And then she hears sirens wailing, and she hasn't let her daughter have a mobile phone, so she's got no way to contact her. So they're all mothers of different stages, and they all want to get to their person or their people in time. And what I found interesting, as you mentioned about the Blitz, and I think, we're both children of the 80s, so we were highly aware, I think, of nuclear strikes, of nuclear risks, of Chernobyl, that there was, I think we had a much greater understanding of just how catastrophic, um, anything to do with nuclear weapons would be. And what I noticed when I wrote this and when I spoke to younger people about it is they haven't had it drummed into them the way we did. And, I'm not sure it was great because I was certainly a very anxious kid about this stuff. Um, but a few said, would it be that bad? Um, and they sort of had ideas of, World War II and blackouts and they just had no idea the reality. So in the book, there is a page at the beginning that's titled If, and it says what would happen, and it talks about radius and it talks about the damage. And because as sort of awful as that was, I did want people to understand just what we're talking about. But what I also did is in the book, the characters, two of them are a little bit younger than me, and they weren't raised in the 80s, so they don't know. And so as they're sort of going around desperately trying to get, they're also learning things along the way about just how bad it is. So yeah, that took some. It's a big, bleak, scary concept, but it's about people and it's about what matters to us, and it's actually about love. So I hope, though it sounds very frightening, it is uplifting. And I found writing it, people have asked me, have you started stockpiling tins and water? And I said, no, quite the opposite. I wouldn't want to survive. And I say that with a smile on my face because it makes me so glad for what I have. It makes me know that I want to make the most of, my family and my life. I'm very happy. Um, and writing it has made me think about what's most important to me, which is an uplifting thing, even if it's a bleak subject. I found it really helpful in lots of ways because it's real guardrails for plotting and for, what can be done in that time. And it's a challenge, and I wanted a challenge. And having to distill people's backstories very, quickly and efficiently, because, you couldn't have them sort of drifting off and having a long memory or, having a long-winded chat with somebody. They had to go. But we also had to care about them. We had to understand who it was they were trying to be with and why they mattered so much to them. So as a writer, that was a real challenge that I really, really enjoyed. It was really sort of pushed me to make every word count. Um, the thing that was hardest, I think, was being accurate and just how far you could go in 59 minutes. And bearing in mind, we've got two very different locations. So in central London, it's absolutely jammed with people. Carrie, gets this message alongside everybody else in a packed train station. So you've got huge amount of people to kind of all trying to do the same thing, get to the same places to sort of try to get through. So it wasn't, her 25-minute walk home would not be a 25-minute walk home. It would be wildly different, and there would be people everywhere, and there would, and so on, and armed police and um, people sort of just, deciding to spend their last 59 minutes finally doing the awful thing they always wanted to do. And then in sort of the isolated countryside setting, where everything is a drive away. And what if you don't have a car? There's a lot to sort of think about like that. So giving each of the character contextual obstacles that were interesting to read and that, were realistic. I hope everything is plausible. And horribly, the premise is plausible. When I first started writing it in 2022, it felt more fictional than it did by the time I was editing it. But yeah, the ticking structure was actually incredibly helpful because I didn't have to spend months trying to think about structure. I knew immediately it's going to be a ticking clock. And I didn't know immediately that I'd show three women, but I knew I'd show more than one point of view. Once I decided it was three, once I decided the locations, it's almost like when you're a writer, you've got this flow chart of possibilities, and it's so hard to know if you've chosen the right ones. But with this, a lot of them were chosen for me already, which made it easier and meant that I could focus on the actual writing, and really, yeah, and the characters and just really go for it. So with Carrie in central London, she wants to get to her child and her partner, but it's packed, busy scenario, and there are lots of other people around, and she encounters in quite a unique place, she encounters a teenage girl who needs her help. And she has to make that decision, like, who am I? Am I somebody who helps or am I someone who doesn't? Even though for fully understandable, justifiable reasons, she needs, time is ticking. Um, and that teenage girl was she's one of those characters who sort of pops up fully formed, which is great when it happens. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes we have to really work for it. But I really enjoyed writing her, and I enjoyed writing their dynamic. And that girl is somebody who knows more about what they're facing than Carrie does. Carrie's an optimist. She doesn't read bad news. So this girl is the one who sort of really underlines to her, there's not going to be an afterwards. There's not going to be, and that was really interesting to write, and I really enjoyed that kind of almost like a buddy road movie for a little part of it. Um, but I'd say that the secondary character I loved best was actually Carrie's landlord, Pepper, who lives in the flat upstairs from the apartment upstairs from her and her family. And he was another one who just arrived sort of fully formed. He's an older guy. He's sort of seemingly rude and grumpy, but he's got lots of layers to him, and he's got a whole history of, he's done everything. He's been an actor, he's been a plumber, he's got this whole sort of backstory of interesting things that he's done. And he just had a voice immediately that was his own. And unfortunately, I couldn't have him on the page for a lot of it. And a lot of that was in memories. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing him. Dialogue is probably one of the things that comes most naturally to me, I would say. It's often how I work out who a character is, um, through sort of writing dialogue between them and other people. Um, I think it's often, I hate big long chunks of backstory. I find dialogue is fantastically useful for exposition like that. Um, and so dialogue, I use dialogue a lot, and that's partly why I needed Carrie to encounter somebody so she could talk to them on her journey. And she encounters other people very briefly along the way as well. But that dialogue between them sort of introduces to the reader a lot of key information that we need to know about Carrie, but also about the threat facing the country and what was going to happen. Um, I think I think writers often have a few things that they're particularly, strong at and others that they have to work at. And I think dialogue is one of my strengths. Luckily, I hope no one's watching this and disagreeing. But that's one of the things that yeah, I really enjoy it. And I think possibly because of also being raised on films and TV, which is obviously so dialogue focused, maybe I've just like imbibed dialogue like that, but I really enjoy it.